I'll just say what a great day. I mentioned this earlier, but it is an absolutely Goldilocks day. It's 25 degrees, the sun is shining, and there's no humidity. But hopefully we'll get some rain. We all need rain, desperately need rain. We can't use all that water out of the well all the time. Anyway, today is also, it would have been Prince Philip's 100th birthday. So he left a couple of months ago, and I heard Prince Edward being interviewed. And he said he sort of thought that he wanted to go before it was his 100th because he didn't like all the fuss. He did not like all the fuss. But what a great father he was, and grandfather and great-grandfather. Just a super, super, super guy. So happy birthday, Prince Philip. Anyway, Women Worth in Wellness is hosting a Father's Day special today, and we have an amazing guest speaker, Angela Mondou, and her special parents, I think, are on as well, Carl and Erica, and brother Brendan Crimble. So welcome, 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 because of course, Angela's going to tell you about her dad and what a great influence he was in her success through her lifetime. We started the Fearless theme last fall, and that was from Janice McDonald's book. It was Girls with Dreams, Women with Vision. And so along the way, certainly men had a huge role to play, fathers and, you know, all sorts of different roles for helping women be fearless. We want more women in C-suites. We want more women business owners. We want all those positive things for women. So you guys, you're going to share your story and tell us what you're doing for your girls. But the other thing is we have two moms who have sons. And I think it's just as important for their role in helping them understand what's important so that girls can go forward, being fearless and being confident. Angela, Krista will introduce everybody, but I'll just briefly mention that Michael is the special partner of Rosalind Morrison, who's the chair of the Institute of Southern Georgian Bay. Brendan, of course, is the lovely partner and spouse of Casey, who owns the Cheese Gallery, who's been an amazing sponsor all the way along. Summer's husband, Mike, is a relative. We'll leave it at that. His grandmother and my father were first cousins. And again, that's another whole story. But anyway, Summer, you know, Mike is a super guy. They're a lovely couple, and they've got 3 little guys. So she's going to tell you about that. And then Crystal, my amazing virtual assistant in Edmonton, she's raising a son as well as a single parent. So she's going to share her story. So over to you, Crystal, to do the introductions. And then Angela, we'll let you do your presentation.
Wonderful.
Right.
Sounds good. Well, thank you everybody for attending here today. You guys are on mute and with videos off, and please, we welcome your questions or comments or anything like that. The speakers love to see them, and we will answer them at the end of Q&A. Just pop them in the chat and we will address them. So a little bit more about our speakers. So today I'm really excited to present Angela Mondew, our featured speaker. She's the president and CEO of Tech Nation, a visionary executive and a self-confessed Air Force brat. Discover how Angela's father's positive influence has impacted her decision to follow her father's career in aviation, learning to fly at quite a young age. And Angela's father taught her to seek what you believe you should have, and she'll share the influence her father had on and her ability to feel empowered. Next up, we have Michael Coward Cpa. He's the father of 5 daughters with a blended family, busy household, a first-generation Canadian whose father was an academic. Michael tells us how his parents influenced his career direction and how he passes that forward. He shares his approach to guiding his girls through university and the beginning of their careers. We'll listen to him talk about the role athletics play on the daughter's life and how he instills family values, which is so super important. So Brendan Thompson is next. He's the father of 2 daughters, and here we will hear his story on how his parents raised him and how that experience influenced the way he's raised his daughters. He shares the main approaches he took with his daughters, primary and being great role models. Then next, as Nancy said, we'll have a different approach where we have Summer, who is an executive coach with the Good Life Institute and mother of 3 sons. She shares her perspective on how to encourage sons to be kind, gentle, and cooperative, and hear her talk about the impact COVID has had on working moms, as well as the impact of kids not getting their needs met. So lastly, I will be speaking as well. I'm Crystal Kaufman, and being an empowered woman and raising my son as a single mother, I'm going to talk about a little bit how the idea of empowering your son to empower the son along with having same support and care given to him so that he can nurture and care for women as well as it being returned back to him. So it's super important to have it to empower women as well as it to be returned back. All right, I will turn it over then. Is it back to you, Nancy, for anything, or are we just going right into Angela now? I think it's just Angela.
Straight to Angela.
Perfect.
Okay. Right. Are we ready? Okay. Listen, thank you so much. What a great idea this is, Nancy and team. And how wonderful for us to be able to celebrate our fathers today and me to be able to reflect on my wonderful father as well. So thank you. I really, I'm honored to be here today doing this with all of you. I thought I'd start out with a little bit of context on the man behind the daughter. We're going to hear from the fathers behind the daughters soon too. And the man who really led me to having what some might call a strength of character. Sometimes my mother calls aggressive, but he really did teach me to harness powerful values and also to kind of seize my life and seize what I wanted out of my career and my life. And at the end of the day, and Crystal, if you want to throw on that slide, really taught me how to be what we might call being a badass kind of girl. He really taught me how to believe in myself by believing in me. I'm going to talk a little bit about that. Owning my own destiny. And what I really mean by that is knowing that I have the choice and I have the empowerment, which at the end of the day, it gives you a lot of freedom as a young woman and I mean, a woman my entire life, but really in the early days as I faced my career. And then last but not least, my dad really gave me a sense of life, living life from a perspective of adventure and wanderlust. So thanks for that, Crystal. Just a couple of thoughts there in terms of what I'm going to be talking about. But the man behind me, just to give you a little bit of a sense, grew up in Northern Ireland. So like one of our speakers, I'm a first generation Canadian. Northern Ireland in Second World War and really leading up to the time of the real troubles in Northern Ireland. He was the oldest of 5 children. And while World War II was going on, his father was fighting for 5 years. And so he was helping his mother as the oldest son, bringing up 4 children, 4 young siblings, quite a bit of difference between him and some of the younger kids. And I remember him telling me this funny story about his mom. And he'd be sitting inside the kitchen and his mom would say to him, "Ah, Carl, who's that baby crying outside?" And he'd say, "Oh, for God's sake, Mom, that's our baby. That's Elizabeth outside." So it just, you know, I heard these stories from him and it really made me reflect on him parenting at a really young age. He had to look after these little kids. He actually had to quit high school as well and go get a part-time job so that his mom could have a bit more money. And so I think what he learned as a kid, which was really reflected in me growing up, is the value of being accountable, of being really responsible for yourself. But he also had an opportunity as a young teenager and as he became an older teenager to ask himself what he wanted out of life and what he wanted to change. And what that really brought forward was a pioneer and a free thinker. And in the 50s, a gentleman that moved to Canada ahead of the rest of his family. His 3 brothers followed him, but he moved to Canada. He had at that point a technical draftsman's degree in aviation, worked for de Havilland, and then later joined the Air Force. So therein kind of lies the person behind who was bringing me up as a young kid. And he really brought up my brother and I, much like he became as a young adult, to be open-minded and really thinking for ourselves. And I remember him telling me when I was 5 years old how proud he was of me, because he'd heard the door slam at 6 o'clock one morning, and he looked out the window, and I was running across this big grass field in my rubber boots and undershirt. And he called me back and he said, Angela, what are you doing? Where are you going? And he said, well, Daddy, I'm going to Sunday school because you won't take me to Sunday school. And 5 years later, he said, I came home when I was 10 years old, and I asked my family, like, Dad, are we Jewish? And he really felt that he had done the right thing. He'd left Northern Ireland, as I said earlier, in his early 20s. He left a country of real strife and fighting and religious strife. And he really wanted us kids to grow up open-minded, not attached to anything, but to be able to think for ourselves. So Crystal, if you want to throw on that next slide, that open-mindedness really, it led me to a life of really thinking for myself, being unique, having the permission to be unique and be different, which is what my dad really wanted for us kids. And funnily enough, over the years, I've targeted my travels around the most incredible religious architecture. I've been to Angkor Wat, this beautiful Buddhist temple in Cambodia, and I've been to the Russian Orthodox, the St. Basil's Cathedral in Russia, and fabulous in Paris, Notre Dame. So funnily enough, I really have lived what I think my father wanted to instill in us. So that lesson was something that played a big part in my life. Seeking, loving cultural differences, differences in people, differences in religion, differences in country. We've embraced a lot of that. And I really tie that back to my dad, who brought us up as an immigrant who'd left his country for many different reasons. Crystal and Nancy mentioned the Air Force background. I am an Air Force kid. That afforded us some phenomenal experiences in life and travel. From the age of 7 to 9 years old, we were moved over to Europe. My father got posted over there. And I was thinking back the other day, by the time I was 9 and coming back to Canada, I'd been to more than 15 countries, which included Yugoslavia and Greece and Liechtenstein and Switzerland and Austria, Germany, you name it. And I remember when we came back to Canada and we went back to school, my little brother had to go to a parents-teachers meeting with my parents because the teacher wanted to talk to my parents about my brother. He had a fibbing problem, apparently, because every time they had a little geography class and showed the Greek Parthenon or the Roman Vatican, he'd put up his hand and say, I've been there. And he had been there. He did not have a fibbing problem. So that life and that experience that my father and my parents actually, but my dad really instilled in us was this world travel and this lust for, as I was saying earlier, culture and continuing to really experience and see the world, which to this day we live. My brother and I never live on the same continent. He's visiting in Canada right now, lives in France. We've lived with me in Europe and him in Africa. So it really is a part of our life, but we really do see life through this very global and interesting lens. Sometimes his lessons were a little tough, I have to admit. While he tells you to reach for the stars, he also can be very pragmatic. And I was a young athlete growing up and had been involved in all sorts of sports. I was cross country and track. And one year I was getting into skiing because we'd learned to ski as children growing up in Europe. And he took me out to buy me secondhand skis. And I do remember looking at him thinking, what? Are you kidding me? And he's like, Angela, honestly, it's much better to be a really good skier with crap equipment than to be a crap skier with really good equipment. Well, I didn't necessarily agree with that, but not a bad lesson, right? Especially with our kids growing up. I remember coming home to him as a cheerleader and telling him, I'd been training for months to get on this team and practicing the splits and everything else. And I was so proud of myself. And when I got home and told him about that, his response to me was, cheerleading? Like, Angela, seriously, you couldn't try out for the football team? Shouldn't you have done that? And I was trying to explain to him that, Dad, no, they don't let women on the football team. But that was his attitude, and he actually seriously meant it. So I was really brought up throughout my teams with a lot of this practical, reach for the stars, practical advice. And I got more of it as I was facing university and trying to figure out what I was going to do. And I wanted to head off to, I was looking at business school and had been accepted to Western and to Queen's. Didn't have the money necessarily to leave home and go to those schools. And I remember saying to my dad in March, Dad, I've been accepted to these schools. Can we look at, me going to one of these schools, and can you pay for it? And I remember him saying, oh, honey, listen, I just got the news. We're moving back to Europe, your brother and mom and I. It's great you've been accepted to those schools. So you better get a job this summer, I think, than to save up for that. And he wasn't joking. I did get a job. I had to work for 3.5 months in a actually data server company, made a lot of money, enough to pay for my own apartment with a couple of other girls. But another really important life lesson at 18 years old, which to this day, I'm really thankful for. I learned to be financially independent at 18. I did have to have that job, and I still had to have a job while I went to school, but I learned how to stand on my own 2 feet financially and know that I could take care of myself. And that served me well over the years. I had an unhappy marriage in my early 30s and really didn't think twice about being able to lean on myself. So an important lesson, again, practical, while telling me to go off to business school and, take on the world. My parents did leave me. They headed off to Europe that summer, which meant I got to go over to Europe for the summers. And that was pretty incredible. And that's where I learned perhaps one of my most fascinating hobbies or skills, and that was how to fly airplanes. Nancy alluded to that earlier. My dad and brother were running the military, the Air Force Gliding Club, if you will. So my first weekend there, I was dragged off to hang out at the gliding club. They threw me on this huge winch, this big machine that had thousands of feet of cable that would attach to the glider, airplane with big wings that had no engine. And I had to press the button, and this massive spool of wire would reel in really fast. The airplane would lift off the ground, and the pilot in it would cut the cable at 1,500 feet. And next thing you know, they were flying. So 10 flights later, and I went up that day, loved it. 10 flights later, I was going solo. And I think that that was perhaps one of my most pivotal lessons in my late teens, early 20s. As I was flying up in that glider and looking down on the ground, I remember thinking to myself, there is only one thing between me and the ground below me, and that's me. So I was really learning through my father's encouragement and my brother. I have to tell you, the two of them were forcing me to not just fly, but to read my flying Bibles every weekend and really understand it. But I learned how to push my envelope, facing fear and having the courage to do something I really thought was incredible, but didn't know if I'd ever figure out how to land those airplanes. And having that ability and that accountability to face fear is very, very powerful. Yet again, another life lesson I think I've used throughout my life. I think I might have a slide there, Crystal. I'm not so sure. I think so, to touch that one. Oh yeah, I kind of like this quote, which I think really emphasizes what I'm talking about, which is gaining strength, courage, and confidence by experiencing, in which you really stop to look fear in the face. So experience is giving you, when you're stopping to look fear in the face, and you have to really do the things that you think you cannot do. And that was one of those things, yet again, that in my first 20 years of life, my father instilled in me. So I'm very thankful for that. The next slide just kind of summarizes for me, in those first 20 years, I learned a lot, obviously, from my father, these lessons that were going to set me up to seize my life as we went forward, and really take on some of those incredible lessons that he had taught me. One, which is believing in myself. And he did that more by showing me how much he believed in me, that I could do really anything he thought I should be doing. I didn't always agree, but very powerful in that way, to push the envelope and do the things that scare you, and really not to expect anything less for yourself. And so I was set up to really seize potential for the next decades of my career and do incredible things and put those lessons into action. And hence, one of those things I did was to join the Air Force. And you just saw that picture there of my father and I. I'd spent those summers in Europe learning to fly airplanes and gliders, having the time of my life. But when I landed those airplanes and finished my university, I knew one thing, and I didn't really want a desk job. I really wanted to do something exciting and adventurous. And I remember talking to my dad about it, and him saying to me, well, you know, why don't you go talk to the recruiters? They're recruiting right now for the Air Force, and you can go fly airplanes, get in, get 3 years of experience, be a leader, you'll be leading a team. And if you don't like it, you get out in 3 years. Well, I stayed in for 8.5 years. I didn't become a pilot. They actually weren't accepting women then, but I did carry on with my private pilot's license. And I faced the biggest challenges of my life in those next 8.5 years. I went into a couple of war zones, and one in particular in former Yugoslavia probably was the most life-changing experience I've ever had in my entire life. I was responsible as a global supply chain officer over in Europe for moving thousands of pounds of equipment, tanks, ammunition, beds, cots, tents, water, food, you name it, from Germany across 3 countries into the middle of this civil war in this full-on war zone. And I was given 10 days to get in there and come up with a plan before all the peacekeepers were on the ground. It was the largest United Nations deployment of its time. And I happened to be, and we have a good slide for this one, Crystal, the only woman among 10,000 men that was actually on site. At some point in my life, I might have thought that was a dream come true, maybe not in this case so much. But there was only one reason I was sent there, and I really want to emphasize this, and that's because I asked for it. They had actually selected a male captain who did not have the global logistics, movement control, moving armies and air forces across countries and into war zones like I had. And until I asked for it, and then my major sent me to the colonel, who then sent me to the general, who then told me, we're not sure where you're going to sleep, Angela. People are getting bombed and blown up every day. It's an absolute mess. But if you want to go, you can go. And that's how this all happened. It all kind of goes back to that believing in yourself and believing what it is you think you should be doing, and not being intimidated by the fact that perhaps it's not the kind of job that necessarily you think you should have, or other people are being considered and not you. It really is about believing in yourself and asking for it. So I did retire after 8.5 years. And then for the next 5 years, I was heading down a path of the tech world. This is a great slide. Actually, leave that one on, Crystal, because it ties right in. Over the next 5 years, I would have 2 children. I had that divorce I was talking about earlier. I had a nanny, and I now had a global career in the tech sector. But it didn't quite start out that way. I landed first in a logistics position, and it wasn't a great job. In fact, I had what I call a very unacceptable meeting that caused me to leave that job and into the next amazing place. I happened to be the only woman in management, and many of you ladies out there listening, or young women, can maybe relate to this. There's going to be times where we're the minority, and I was a lot in my life. And in this case, I was the only woman in this logistics team in Canada that was a manager. And I went into a meeting. My boss had asked me to go present a plan I'd come up with, and I sat down, and the most senior man in the room, the managing director, took one look at me and said to my colleague, "Oh, Angela shouldn't be at this meeting. She doesn't need to be here. Kirk, you can present for her." Well, this slide says it all. No one can make you feel inferior without your consent. I left that room, went back to my desk, I was humiliated for about 5 minutes, and then I got angry. And then I went and got an amazing job at Nortel Networks that led me to BlackBerry as well. So sometimes those little kicks are all we need to get us heading in the right direction. In the tech world, and it's been fantastic. I've been there for the last 20 years of my life. I've led 2 executive positions in our most incredible Canadian companies. Some of you may remember Nortel Networks, BlackBerry, traveled and lived around the world, just like I was brought up to believe and really wanted to do. I had my boys, I had my nanny, I was a single mom for a while, but it was just still the most amazing experience ever. And all of my unique experience in the military and being a female executive in tech. When I was at BlackBerry, I was one of the very few, I think there was 2 of us, senior directors, women as executives. It led to me doing a lot of public speaking and meeting David Chilton, the author of The Wealthy Barber, and getting a lot of mentoring and encouragement that I should write a book, which would have been a big, huge decision. It's tough to write a book and keep your career going on in the tech sector. So I thought a lot about it, and I decided that after 14 years in tech, I had a big decision to make. I was on a path, I was on a mission. I felt like I had a lot to tell. And so what did you do? What did I do? I did what I always did. If I felt like I was about to do something really crazy, I would pick up the phone and I'd call my dad. That was my litmus test. And my dad, being open-minded, would usually be really supportive, which meant that I could go back to all of those naysayers out there and say, yeah, I'm doing it. My dad's behind me. So I launched my book. I became an entrepreneur. I continued to consult for BlackBerry, so I was able to make all my worlds come together. But being an entrepreneur and writing that book and getting out and speaking, and then I built a company around that. I had a company for 9 years around with strategic marketing and supporting the tech sector in strategic sales. That suited my soul. It was an incredible experience. It was perhaps one of the hardest things I've ever done. I think I have a slide for this one as well. This is what I thought a lot, actually, which was there's my book cover. Next slide, if you don't mind, Crystal. I spent a lot of time thinking this, like, what the hell was I thinking, leaving a career in tech and writing a book? But I still ended up working in tech, and I'm still there now. So if you flip to the next slide, Crystal, this is kind of where I've landed in life. My dad really did teach me to question what I was doing with my life and to make sure that I was living the life I wanted to live. I love this quote from Eminem: if you had one shot or one opportunity to seize everything you ever wanted in one moment, would you capture it or would you let it slip? So here I am decades later. I still ask myself that question probably once a year. I know once I start asking it, it could lead me to trouble. I'm now in a phenomenal place as the CEO of the largest tech association in Canada. I have a wonderful platform as a national leader. I have an opportunity to influence Canada in our future in terms of how globally competitive we become with our use of technology. I'm driving diversity programs for young women and minorities across the nation, which includes 5-year-olds, getting them into STEM programs. I'm working with senior government leaders to really help them drive Canada in a direction as well to continue to be a global leader. And as I look ahead at my next 10 years, with the confidence that I have now that was instilled in me and the experience and I think really one of the biggest understandings I have at this phase in my time and in life and my philosophy is I got to make my next 10 years my best 10 years, just like I made my last 10 years, and really continue to live my next 10 with a ton of passion, continue to seek all that adventure that I love to seek. There's still a lot of things out there, and there's a lot more beautiful architectural buildings out there I want to go visit. And I really have one person to thank for being able to look back and feel like there isn't a single other thing I could have squeezed into my life. And that's my father. And I just want to again thank you, Nancy, and all of you listeners and guests for sharing this day to spend some time thinking about are incredible fathers, and being the daughter of these men that can really shape us, and as well as the mothers that are going to talk about shaping their wonderful sons. So thank you so much for this time.
So I told you she was a rock star, and Angela, that is just amazing, 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 amazing. I love the story about in high school getting on the cheerleading team, which I was never able to do. I could never do a cartwheel, no matter how hard I tried. And he said, well, what about the football team? Like all it takes is that question to get you thinking about possibilities. Eleanor Roosevelt, of course, too, was a rock star with all her quotes, because they're always so poignant. They always hit the nail on the head, and they always challenge us. Like, is it this or is it that? Well, it's entirely up to you. Yeah. And Warren Buffett says the best investment you can make is in yourself. So that thread that your dad started, and calling your dad when you came to a crossroads, amazing, amazing, amazing. Thank you so much. I love your leadership book. We have to spend more time talking about that, and perhaps do an event, because it really is exceptional. Anyway, you're not done yet. You've got another 50 years to go. So I hope your mom and dad are hearing all of this and are.
I hear the background. Yeah. So
good,
thanks.
Good. Continue to be very, very proud. Very proud. Okay, well, we'll go to the panel now. We have Michael, and he's got a unique story. And then we'll just go on to Brendan. There's Michael. There he is.
Hello.
Okay, Michael Coward.
Yes.
You're no coward. You're going to tell us your story.
Absolutely not.
Okay.
Yeah, well, that was a terrific story. Angela, your story of your life is very motivating. I think that I know that a number of my daughters are listening in, and they're all very successful, but certainly your background was very motivating and great to listen to. And thank you, Nancy, for inviting me to be a panelist. Just because, well, two things. I'm obviously married to Rosalind Morrison and have 5 wonderful daughters. But tonight we're really talking more about my 5 wonderful daughters, how successful, how confident they are. And I should state at the outset a kind of a disclaimer that because they're all successful and wonderful daughters, I'm not sure I can really claim to be the only motivation force in their life that got them where they are today. So just so you understand, I'm totally proud and delighted of my daughters and worked with them on many things, but they also made where their own lives themselves. So to give you some background, our 5 daughters, it is from a blended family, as I'm sure you can understand. And the girls currently range from 34 down to around 25 years of age. So they're all grown, successful, and working in the Toronto area currently. They're dealing with the pandemic in different ways and looking forward to coming out from that and continuing on with their careers. For a part of a background, I am a first-generation Canadian. My parents were British. So as you can imagine, my upbringing was a little more strict than the way that my daughters have been brought up. But I think certain basic principles that my mother, who ran the family, and we called her very fondly the General, because certainly my mother, Molly, she was in charge of 3 boys and my sister, 4 of us in my family, and she ran the family. My father was a professional actuary from Britain. So that, to give you a bit of background, we grew up in Toronto in that loving family. During my life, I was fortunate to be married a number of times, and ultimately our 5 daughters, we wound up living all together in a small rented house in Toronto, North Toronto. And I think that looking back on it, that time was a time of bonding for us all to really be thrown in together, realize that the girls were in different levels of school at that time, either in primary school or high school. And so we had a very interesting time. I think many of the values that the girls picked up were formed at that time before they started to go away to university and to go on to their own lives. And so I think that from my point of view, and with the great support of Rosa and my wife, we tried to make sure that the girls, that we were honest with them. We had honest conversations, that we led by example, tried to show them that, yes, we'd had some ups and downs in our lives, but we were really trying to lead by example to show them how you can overcome adversity and be successful and happy at the end. So we tried to do that. What I did in a little bit of preparation for this being a panelist, I thought, well, I'm going to reach out to my 5 daughters and find out what they think they got from me as they were growing up. And it was interesting, I got a very different viewpoint from all of them. Some things I could expect, but some of them stated it quite differently. So I just wanted to go over a few of the things that came to me. One thing that came through was to be an example. Basically, we were tried to be happy, and we were professionals in what we were doing. So we had a level of understanding and a level of service and a way of dealing with people that we tried to impart to the girls as they were growing up. Hard work, obviously, was another thing that we looked for. Or that we tried to demonstrate. So, sometimes we would be working overtime, we would have to work weekends, we would have to do different things. So they knew that our jobs were important to us and that hard work was something they were going to have to get used to if they wanted to achieve their dreams. Another common theme that came out from all of the girls was the fact that they knew that we felt proud, and we told them consistently how proud we were of their achievements, how proud we were of their athletics. We're interested in meeting their friends. We wanted to hear about their school marks, their projects, and we were always proud and encouraging them. So I think that was something that came out as a common theme. Something else that came forward was the fact that we would have conversations that were meaningful and fairly, deep. We didn't spend, particularly me, I'm more of a less talk, more action kind of person. But one thing, we did have meaningful talks about difficult situations, and that was fairly common. And we encouraged the kids to think big. So as much as Angela's father clearly taught her to think big, we, in our own way, taught our children as well. You've got to reach higher. There was kind of expectations they would have a higher education, which they all have got through university. And so I think that in some ways that filtered down to them. Another interesting item that came up from my daughters was that we taught them to establish boundaries. And by boundaries, I don't think we mean boundaries in a confining way, but boundaries that were set by our daughters so they could say, this is, what I will do, it's within my comfort level, and this is what I won't do in terms of, life situations. So they set boundaries for themselves, and by setting boundaries, they were able to calmly and diplomatically deal with situations that might have come up that could cause them some stress. They knew that, okay, this is a boundary for me. I will do some things, other things I'm not comfortable with. And so we helped them determine boundaries. And I think that once we saw that they've determined their own boundaries, it enabled a trust relationship between us. We could see, okay, we know they're fine moving on with their lives, going out at night, they're fine with their friends because they know that they have their own boundaries. It's not something that we necessarily are stomping our foot and saying, okay, this is what you must do or you mustn't do. They had their own boundaries. So that was a great thing that they did. They were able to set their own boundaries. And I think that by example of our own activities, of our own careers, the girls were able to then discover some areas they might not otherwise be interested in. And one example, well, two examples I will give you is I did later in life have a career in the insurance consulting industry. Well, not any students that I'm aware of go to university for insurance. It's just not something that people do. However, one of my daughters, as a result of learning more of that area, did become involved in the human resources and insurance area. Another area was an area that Rosalind, my wife, is involved in, which is in the philanthropic and social well-being areas. And so because of her long career in developing communities, working with the Toronto Community Foundation, one of our daughters also has an active interest in that and is involved in working with government agencies and different groups more in that area. So it's a real mix of things that I think that our daughters have picked up. One is that stands out for me again is by setting an example. For me, dealing with issues straightforwardly with them, but not harboring it, not going on and on, getting more action, and also by sports and activity. We were all active as skiers in the winter. We all decided that as Canadians, or I decided as Canadian, I love the sport, wanted our girls to be involved, being outside, meeting people, being able to travel. So they were all heavily involved in skiing. And in the summers, we're involved with various camps, canoeing, and being outside and doing things in that way. So trying to round them out, that getting outside, getting activities, giving them the support and developing the trust are, I think, the main things that I think of.
Excellent, Michael. Excellent. I'm reacting to your comment about insurance. Nobody wants to pay any attention to insurance, but definitely there is an excellent opportunity for a career. And certainly I know Roz with the whole philanthropic focus in Southern Georgian Bay, and it's just so vibrant. I'm thinking about those 5 daughters when they each have 3 or 4 daughters, and the family picture, that'll be pretty special.
Well,
anyway.
I would be delighted. I think some of them are listening now. If they do have 3 or 4 daughters, I'd be delighted. But so far, nothing's happening, right?
Okay, well, watch this space, right?
I will.
Anyway, well done. Over to Brendan. He's going to tell us about his 2 daughters and how he helped them be fearless and confident. And I'm going to do my video off. Michael, you go off
Right,
too.
I'm going to be off. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. I'm very excited to talk about my daughters as well. I'm from a larger family. I have 2 brothers, 2 sisters. My dad was a lawyer, and mom was a home care, like basically a mom, a regular mom. She had expectations of us. My brother and I, who were about 1.5 years apart, basically we were competitive swimmers, so we were basically free in the middle of the day. We swam in the morning and swam at night. So my mom figured out an opportunity for a summer job was to barter a lawnmower from a neighbor. Ultimately, that turned into a large company with over 30 employees, and the rest is history. Anyway, from that, we had those same expectations with our daughters. My wife and I, this isn't just me. It was definitely a team effort. Casey and I have always been on the same page with regards to how we dealt with stuff. We hardly ever argue. We seem to always come to the same sort of agreement, and I think that really works with our daughters. Our daughters didn't play us off. They didn't say, oh, mom said this and dad said this, that sort of thing. So it worked out well for us. We've, I guess the fundamentals of our relationship for our children were, our expectations. Like we figured our children should read, they should write, they should learn how to swim because we live in Canada. They should know how to do mathematics and choose a winter sport. We encourage them to choose skiing because it's a family sport and everybody can do it. Both went through the industry at Blue Mountain. My youngest one actually volunteered when she was 13 for the first kind of half a year until she was 14 and became an assistant pro. Both have their skiing levels. One has is double certified and still skis to this day. They love it. It's a great sport. I guess, what am I saying? With those expectations, we also believed in jobs, and part of those things was they owned their own cell phone bills. So they had that expectation and learned how to money management, learned all those skills, learned because of the jobs, they had to be there on time because, they did babysitting things, which generally is one of us had to be there to babysit them, to babysit the kids that they were babysitting, but it was all fun. Great times. From the life skill standpoint, they learned time management skills. They learned how to fail. They learned how to accept to fail. As my dad also said, one of my dad's greatest statements at the Sunday table was, if you're going to be a garbage man, be the best garbage man. And I know that doesn't sound great in this today's terms, but I still love it, and it really resonates with me. To be the best of what you can do. I'm just trying to think through my notes. I'm not really a public speaker, as you can see. I'm kind of just one of those swingers. One of the other things that we have been passionate about is to make sure that that you really must love yourself before you can love somebody else. And I think that has been a very strong thing that our daughters have learned. Which has been modeled, but it's also been talked about. And so that they walk through society, walk through their jobs with their heads high, and they have that expectation that they don't allow people to abuse them. And, it happens. But, to this day, they both have side hustles. My youngest one is, she's graduated out of UBC with honors. She was hired just this year with the ministry in the forestry industry, and is doing amazing. Her side hustle is teaching English to Asian families. It's awesome watching her. She does an amazing job. My other daughter is a graduate out of Queen's University in business. She's a director of operations for a bathing suit company, a huge, big job. And her side hustle is email marketing. It's incredible. You know why? Because there's 24 hours in a day. And I think that's the expectation, is that that to have goals and to move on through life. I don't know much more that I can say. So if Nancy, you want to jump back on to take me through the...
Okay, I've got a
Sorry.
question.
Sure.
I know you have a dog, and normally when there's one male living with a bunch of women, the dog is male. Is the dog male or female?
So we've got 3 dogs.
3 dogs.
Yes, we've got one is a 14-year-old male named Hudson, a standard poodle. The second one is about a 4-year-old Labradoodle. Her name's Lily. And then the third one is Peanut. She's a Ecuadorian rescue from that we got at the start of COVID times. My eldest daughter has her dog at home just this week. Anyway, and his name's Taco, and he's from Sayulita, Mexico.
Wow.
So and brought her back just this winter, or him back.
Very good.
This winter.
Very good.
So-
Well, it's terrific to hear what your girls are doing, and both of them are in significant leadership roles. And I
Yes.
love your comment about their side hustle. I mean,
Yeah.
that's terrific. That's terrific. It's like, keep moving, like their mom. Their mom never stops, right?
Yes, yeah, it's, there's 24 hours in a day, you might as well make hay.
Right. And what about your special project that you're working on? Your little silver,
Oh, anniversary?
no. You're refurbishing your whole,
Oh, the Airstream. Oh, no, that's, it's a tough one because of the
Okay.
trade. So we purchased a 1975 Airstream, a 32 footer, gutted it, and it needs to be rewired, plumbing, all that sort of stuff. Well, we've just got roughed in plumbing, so we still need to do the floor, the insulation, the electrical. It's a project. Hopefully it'll be online within the next 3 years. I don't
good.
know.
Well, the
It's a
reason
job.
I ask you is because you're showing them that the adventure continues.
Yes. Oh, thank you.
Like that,
That's for
that's your
sure.
side hustle.
Yeah,
That's your side hustle.
I have lots of them.
Very good. Okay, well, we'll get
Thank you.
Summer. We'll hear what she has to say. And then everybody can come back, and Crystal, everybody can come back, and we'll see if there are any questions. There's the lovely Summer. So tell us, with those 3 boys, how old are your boys?
So I am the proud mom of Ford, who is almost 10. Bo is almost 8, and Sam is 6.
Okay, so Summer and I hadn't seen one another for a long time. And when we did reconnect, I think Ford was 4
Oh my gosh.
and the other 2 were younger. So
Yeah.
you've got a little pack of boys. So the key question is, how are you helping them be kind to girls so that girls don't lose their confidence and can continue to be confident and fearless?
Yeah, it's a great question. And, for me, I always knew I wanted to have children. If you asked me when I was a young girl, what do you want to be when you grow up? It was, I want to be a mom. And then, that stage of life came upon us. And I'm one of 4, Mike's one of 4. We knew we wanted a big family. And here, lo and behold, I ended up with 3 boys. And, they're sort of like, what's the saying, they're greater than the sum of their parts. Their boyness is magnified by the fact that there is 3 of them. But, for me, I think that ultimately, if they are happy and confident within themselves, then they're going to be able to be kind and open and confident in, in every stage of life. And I think that I was reading a book about, raising boys and the importance of raising confident boys who like themselves, because an extreme example will be misogyny, and misogynists don't like women, but they like themselves even less. And so for me, it's really just about, allowing them to be boys, giving them ample opportunity to be wild and free. And Mike and I lived in a little house downtown Toronto, and we made the decision that we needed a big backyard and we needed a slower pace of life. And so we moved out to Port Hope for small town living. And we were giving ourselves major high fives last spring, because our move was almost 4 years ago now, but our whole experience throughout this pandemic would have been so very different if we were still downtown Toronto in our matchbox house, which literally just had a deck. So, building confidence. I was raised by hardworking parents. I too am a first generation Canadian, and I think the greatest gift that my parents gave me was confidence. And I'm one of 4. I had 2 brothers who were laser focused on what they wanted to do with their lives. And I was not that way. I knew I wanted to be a mom, but my career path has been a meandering career path, and every step of the way I've enjoyed it. But the ability to chart my own path, make my own decisions, fall down and pick myself back up has allowed me to be who I am today, where I'm resilient and strong. So I want the boys to have those very same opportunities. And, so we give them every opportunity. We're raising them to be independent and to do things for themselves. And, every chance I get, I try to reinforce, the things that girls like. They coincidentally all have had a little girl as a best friend at some point or another, which was not by design, but I'm proud of them for that. That to them, they see no difference. And so those are some of the things.
Tell us a story about no means no. I love that.
Oh, right. So a few years ago, I was reading an unsavory story about, a young kid, varsity swimmer and down in the States who had, was being charged with some offenses against women. And they talked about his parents and, he came from a good family. And in that moment, I realized that well-intentioned parents can miss opportunities to instill the right values in their kids. And I reflected on that, God forbid, fast forward, one of my boys makes a bad judgment call or a mistake, or, what can I do now? And in that moment, I realized that as a mom of 3 boys, I'm constantly being tested. My patients, they wear you down. And I realized that one of the most important things I can do when they're little is teach them that no means no. Can I have a chocolate bar right before dinner? No, but also, and staying firm to that and so you have to be careful about when you say no and make sure you really are gonna, you're not just saying no because it's your first instinct, but you're intentional about that no. And maybe in some cases you just respond, let me think about it, rather than, quick to no. So, I felt like that was an important opportunity for me to instill that right now.
I think that's such an important lesson. I mean, really, it's so easy to say, well, maybe, or maybe a small piece, but you are teaching them that no means no. And that is such an incredibly powerful learning. It really is incredible.
Yeah.
I haven't seen them for a while, but I know when I did see them, they were all very polite, especially Ford. He was always, he's paying attention to what's going on. He's just a really, really good kid. And the other ones are very sweet. So keep those pictures coming on Facebook.
I will. Thanks, Nancy.
Okay, well, let's get Crystal in here and she can tell us, she can share her story with us about her son as a single mom.
Yeah, so I really resonate a lot with what everybody said today. Thank you. I'm really actually inspired by everybody. It's encouraging to hear such amazing stories and just the incredible influence that men can have on daughters and just in general women in their lives. And a big shout out, happy Father's Day to all the incredible fathers. I know it's next week, but I really honor you and the role that you play. I am blessed to have a man who I've called dad, raised me from all my life for 3 months old and completely take me in as his own. And he helped me form the woman that I am. But I was just as lucky as well to meet my biological father a few years ago, and now the influence that he has on my life today. So I kind of have 2 fathers. And now as a single solo parent who my son doesn't have a father in his life, or active father, I should say, I see the importance of playing both the role of the mother and the father in his life. And what does that look like exactly? How can I be the soft, nurturing mother and then the strong, confident father at the same time for him? So it's really my passion to help instill the values so that he can grow up to be successful. And I teach him to believe in personal empowerment, people empowerment, not necessarily female and woman and male empowerment. It's about personal empowerment. And when you come from that place of power, it benefits everybody and it helps empower the women and the men in our lives. When we inspire each other and inspire other genders to be the best that they can, it honors them as well as yourself. And so what I really mean that is that in the female empowerment movement, women have really had to step up into empowerment. There's been a lot of creation of equality in workplace, in power roles, and it's just so amazing to see the overall embracement of women in strong role model type of roles, and to see women as leaders and empowering figures in this world. But at the same time, men are embracing learning a different level of emotional capacity, vulnerability, embracing equality. So it's different. They have to shift as well. And so I think then what does that mean to the next generation? How can I do my part in helping my son embrace all of that and learning that new equality balance? And to me, it's just important that in raising young men, again, we go back to personal empowerment. It's teaching him that it's super important to treat your woman or your mom or women in your life like a queen, but at the same time, it's ensuring you're treated like a king in return, and that it's both. And it's teaching that anything, that we're capable of anything. We often listen to powerful songs, and one of our favorite pastimes is cruising in the car, and we'll crank up the tunes. And I'm really cognizant of the songs that we listen to. A lot of the songs in our days, the words can be negative. So I'm very, very selective over the songs that I pick, and I very much select songs that are about empowerment, and songs that I can, one of our favorites is a song like I Can Do Anything, where I teach him that. And then when he comes from that place, when it's teaching those values, when those are the values he knows and he understands and he believes to be the truth, not only does he embrace it for himself and rise up to the standards, he helps others rise up to the standard. So the best thing I can say is that if I want to instill values, I be the example for him. If I want him to feel worthiness, I show that I'm worthy. If I want him to show, I want to show him empowerment, I show that I'm empowered. If I want to show him vulnerability and authenticity and how to be that, I show being vulnerable and authentic. And so he sees his mom role modeling this all the time and understands that I play both roles for him. And there's days he sees me struggle, and I know that he's watching, and I do my best to actually like show the emotion without, completely breaking down, or I don't need him to fix me. But in those times, it's like, he's such a sweetheart. He sees me struggle, and he'll like write a little card just to say, "You got this, Mom, you're so great. I love you." And it's just those types of things, that little bit of empowerment that he's doing for me. And I think he will do that as he goes forward. I find it really important to show him that we all come from a place of empowerment, and showing him how to have healthy relationships. It starts with the mother. It honestly does. And then it reflects over to the girlfriends and to other girls in his life and coworkers or whatever that may be. He's a teenager now, and it's now his turn to shine, and now he gets to have that. He's starting into relationships, and a few girls have broken his heart, and it's really inspiring to watch how he handles that and how he embraces empowerment for himself. He's, if a girl needs a little support, he thinks of these extra little thoughts for them and is helpful for them. But when we all come from this understanding that we can learn and we can support each other to be empowered, and he can support women to be empowered, this will all come back to him as well and help him be the best man he can be too. So that's the philosophy I've taken in raising him, and I believe it's super important. And I know I'm doing something right when my son says, "Mom, I think I'm going to be a really good dad one day." And I said, "Son, I think you are too."
Good. Well, the one thing I noticed was when you used your air miles,
Yes.
and you, we've got a barbecue, and you let him put it all together, and then you gave him lots of credit. So you let him be the little man, which was super.
Absolutely. And giving him opportunities to be that leader, and in being that inspiring, powerful man himself, and doing along with him, it makes a world of difference. So yes.
Okay, let's get everybody to come back, all our panelists and Angela. And I think there are a couple of questions here. Okay, Kimberly is saying, how did Michael engage in the boundary conversation and help his daughters discover their comfort zone? Kimberly has 4 children, 3 boys and 1 daughter. So a little pack too.
All right, well, I'm trying to think back to that time. I think that the boundaries were more around how to behave in situations diplomatically and how to deal with stress. So it was more around rather than losing control of their daughters themselves when they're in a stressful situation. I think that trying to show them, look, there's going to be many things that come up, and the way to solve them is to take a step back, take some breaths, take some deep breathing, think about what you're going to say or what you're going to do, and then react and make those decisions. So it was around establishing a boundary for behavior as much as anything else. And I used to like to say to my daughters, well, one of my roles as your father, and being father of 5 daughters in the family, is to keep everybody within the corral, so you don't let them jump out of the corral and get loose. You know, it's corral within the meaning of acceptable behavior. Okay, so that's really the one boundary that I can think of. Also, in terms of making decisions about what is right and what is wrong, you know, getting involved in things that they shouldn't be doing, such as you know, drinking too much, drugs, that when they're too young can't handle it, a whole range of things, making them think, is that really the kind of person that you want to be? You know, you should be able to set your own boundaries and think about that. So those are my thoughts.
You were doing some insurance consulting. Maybe you'll be doing some parenting consulting.
It's possible, but
I
as
have
I
a-
said, I tried to do it in very few words, mostly showing them by action, trying to be a good example.
Good role model.
Yeah.
Angela, leadership. You've got a big role currently. What are your comments about leadership today? Because, you know, it's things have changed so much. How are you dealing with that in you know, in your role? You're in a very powerful and influential role, and leadership is crucial. And you can't call your dad. You're on mute. You're on mute. You're on mute.
And
Yeah.
there you go. Sorry.
There you go.
My comments about leadership, and let me know if you can hear me, because my
We can hear. Yep.
internet's a bit unstable today. Am I okay?
Yep.
I don't think so, right? Is it okay?
Keep talking. We can hear you.
Okay. Leadership, I always look at leadership as being very transitional or transformational. And we're in a time now where you really have to be agile as a leader. We just went through the pandemic. It meant looking at my business, changing the business model, pulling the team in and realigning them to live a virtual world and deliver our programs and services that way. So everything about leadership in the last decade or more has been about being able to think on your feet, agile. Even right now, we're dealing with a lot of, and this kind of aligns with this conversation, focus on diversity and inclusion and minorities. And I'm just signing off a big statement for the Pride Month, and embracing what's different is really, really important as well. So it's a really interesting time. And I think really to succeed right now, agility and empathy and, you know, all of those really high EQ skills are really important.
Mm-hmm. We did an event a year ago, and it was women leading with empathy. And one of our speakers was a young woman, and you know, she's very passionate about it. And so the question was, how do you do that? And she said, at the dinner table, you have the conversation. You know, what happened? What do we care about? How can we help? All those sorts of things. And just taking the time to have that conversation. Summer, you're an executive coach. Tell us about leadership in your world these days.
That's fine. Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting time. You know, in the work that I do, we work specifically with senior female executives, and women are burning out like never before with all of the increased responsibility that they have as a result. And so, you know, one of the reasons why women burn out so much is because we take everything on. And what we teach our clients is, you know, you got to shift from doing great work yourself to leading and influencing how great work gets done around you. And so it's really about, you know, to echo what Angela said, like EQ is going to be, emotional intelligence is a skill that is going to be highly valued in the future. Skills are changing, the necessary and valued skills in the workplace are shifting because of technology and AI, but EQ will be hugely important because that's where you get followership. That's where you gain respect. That's where you can be inspiring and influential when you have EQ and people, you know, and you're able to reframe things so people can see things differently and get behind them. And so, you know, we, in the work that we do, we really focus on women focusing on leadership, you know, and a lot of women really struggle with, they feel guilty if they're not in the trenches doing the work. And I often say, you've got to step back and be like a conductor with an orchestra, where you've got this high performing team around you and you're just giving them that perfect balance of mentorship, training, autonomy. So they take ownership, not delegation. And you know, that's a really valuable skill set these days.
Mm-hmm. I think this moment in time coming out of COVID is huge for women. And with the K recovery, there are women who have done exceptionally well, and there are women who have been displaced to an unbelievable point. So it's a really, really unique moment in time. And certainly when we look at all the faces on the screen, we're all white. So diversity is huge. Diversity is more important than ever. And so each of us has a lot of work to do going forward. I don't think we've got any more questions, do we, Crystal? No. So we'll wrap up. I'll say thank you so much to everyone. I think for the people who are here as our guests, it gives them some things to think about. We really wanted to talk about the effects that men have, especially fathers, and certainly Angela's example was right on. You know, her dad from day one was there to challenge her to just go for it. And same thing with Michael, and same thing with Brendan, and same thing with Summer. Same thing. Wonderful. And Crystal, you hear what she's doing. I think you've now got a better idea of who Crystal is and what her challenges are. But from my standpoint, she's handling them exceptionally well. Exceptionally well. So I'll say thank you again. Our next event, we have one more special event, and it's June the 23rd. And this came up, I've been doing some work with a fellow named Mark Healy, who was John Turner's right-hand man for a very long period of time. And he said, do you know about Tony Comper and what he did when he was the CEO of BMO? And I said, well, I know of him, but I've never met him personally. Well, he was the person who brought in and supported the Canadian Women Entrepreneur Awards. So that's a big deal, you know, celebrating women entrepreneurs. He also was a huge supporter of Catalyst. And I think at his moment in time, he really felt, and I think a lot of it was, quite frankly, his wife, Elizabeth, who said, Tony, you should do this. Tony, you should do that. She unfortunately has passed away. But it's going to be about his story and what he did during his moment in time. The book is called Personal Account. And so this time around, it's not going to be free. The tickets are going to be $50, which means that you're going to get a copy of the book. But what he did that I think is absolutely incredible, in his moment in time, he really captured opportunities, and he was a trailblazer, and a trailblazer as it pertains to advancing, promoting, and championing women. So, you know, what better way than to go back and celebrate what he did? Because I think at this moment in time, women have an equal opportunity to really step up and do some significant things. He and his wife also established a charity, which is called FAST, Fighting Anti-Semitism. And they're not Jewish. They're not Jewish, but they just saw that there was hate in the community. And so he doesn't want to continue on with this charity forever. So it's being taken over by a lady, Dr. Catherine Chatterley in Winnipeg, who is exceptional. And when you hear about the programs that go into the schools, lesson plans for teachers all across Canada, anything pertaining to diversity challenges, things that would cause us all to be outraged. It really is amazing. So once again, we'll have Bruce interviewing Tony. Take us back, tell us what you were thinking at the time. In his day, that was also when RBC and BMO were potentially merging, but that didn't happen. So we have one of the panelists is the senior exec from RBC at the time. Great guy, Charlie Coffey. Maybe you probably know him, Summer. Anyway, Charlie Coffey. Anyway, it will be terrific. So of course, everybody will get an invitation. Please come, please encourage other people to come. And it will be a celebration, and we will wrap up the Women Worth and Wellness series for this year. So that's it. Thank you, everybody.
All
Well
right,
done.
Gary.
Thank you.
Thanks again. It was really enjoyed it.
Well, thank you, Michael. You were a star. Your daughters are going to be so proud of you.
Mhm.
Dad, we're so proud of you.
I'll be hearing about it for some time. You can be sure of that.
And
happy holidays.
Brendan, you as well. And Summer, thank you again, Angela. Excellent. Well done.
Thanks.
Okay,
Pleasure.
I have to say one more thing with regards to Prince Philip, and this came out in the interview with Harry and Meghan. Oprah said, do you Zoom with your grandparents? And he said, oh yes, frequently. But he said, when it's over, I guess Prince Philip would just close the computer. He wouldn't push the leave button. It was just like, okay, we're done. Close the computer, bye. So again, Prince Philip, what a great guy. Thank you all.
Bye, Nancy. Thanks a lot.
You're welcome. Thank you.